The Yellow Vest, or Gilets Jaunes movement, started in France and has exploded around the world, from Spain, the Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, Taiwan, and more. Governments around the world have responded with repression, but rampant police violence and even military intervention has not been able to stop the movement from growing. But how did we get here? Who are the Yellow Vest protesters and what do they want? Keep watching to find out. Last year, reports started emerging in the French press where oil company representatives revealed that taxes had been increasing on fuel and were planned to continue increasing until at least 2020. This led to a noticeable rise in consumer costs. A petition started in late May of 2018 calling for lower gas prices at the pump. By the end of October, that petition and others like it started to gain national attention. The open movement grew with dissent over a variety of issues, with some people calling for everything from lower gas prices, changes to European Union politics, the resignation of the current president, and more. A call to action started spreading across the internet to block sections of busy traffic around the country on November 17th. The yellow vest, something required to be in all French cars, became a common symbol of support for the movement. From people displaying their vests on their windshield to mobilizing publicly, many actions happened leading up to the 17th. The first day of action was massive. In France alone, roughly 300,000 people took to the streets, bringing large portions of the country to a standstill, and La Réunion, an island controlled by the French government just east of Madagascar. The actions continued for days, despite attempts by the state to violently suppress them, with some of the heaviest escalations happening on blocked roads which are important for access to oil shipping, refinery, and commercial areas. The army is called into La Réunion a few days later. The movement is described as having acts, each marked by a national day of action every Saturday since November 17th. The beginning of Act 2 on November 24th saw thousands of demonstrators clash with police on the Champs-Élysées, a large and important avenue in Paris with palaces, monuments, luxury shops, and a park which borders the official residence of the French presidents. On November 27th, the government has the Minister of Ecological Transition meet with two prominent members of the movement who insist they are only spokespersons and not leaders. The Yellow Vests leave dissatisfied, with one of them saying that the government has no real desire to improve the lot of the people. Starting on December 1st, Act 3 saw the protest and the police response continue to escalate. Civilians took the Arc de Triomphe. Students disrupted over 188 high schools as they joined in the movement. The government announced its intention to cancel the increased fuel tax on December 5th, but this did nothing to quiet the protests, which are still gaining international notoriety. 5 days later, the president gave a televised announcement promising a minimum wage increase and a number of tax reforms, but it was still not enough. By the end of December, roughly 3,000 people had been injured in France from the demonstrations, the vast majority of them from police violence. On Wednesday, January 2nd of 2019, a prominent member of the Yellow Vest movement is arrested near the Champs-Élysées, along with others who were not demonstrating at the time, charged with organizing an undeclared event. 2 days later, the beginning of Act 8 only sees a resurgence in protesters. On January 7th, the government promises to act with severity against certain demonstrators, with the Secretary of State proclaiming, in a Republican state, the monopoly of legitimate violence is that of the police. Participants of the movement are aware that the media focus on destructive and/or violent elements of the protest was normalizing the use of state violence. In response, there is a concerted effort within the movement to keep the protests safe and accessible for more vulnerable people themselves, rather than rely on the state. This does not stop all clashes with police, but December is still known as the height of the violence for the protests so far, which has not been met. Still seeking an end to the demonstrations, the French government continued to pass increasingly strict anti-protesting laws, which enable them to prohibit protest or penalize people for associating with them more easily, such as anti-mask laws, or the breaker-payer principle, which allows the government to hold arrested protesters collectively liable for any damage at the protest without needing any individual convictions. After more than 20 weeks of endless protests, the government has reinforced its exhausted police force with military power in March as expansive Yellow Vest demonstrations continue to disrupt day-to-day life, continuously calling attention to critical social, economic, and ecological issues which they say affect everyone. While some people have tried to appropriate the Yellow Vest for conventional, right-wing, or even pro-oil movements, others around the world have adopted it as a symbol for people's solidarity and direct action. Perhaps most noticeably in Belgium, where protesters have been participating in the movement with such strength that the Belgian Prime Minister was forced to resign in December. Meanwhile, the French Yellow Vests, refusing to affiliate with or become a conventional political party, have been building their internal organization structure in revolutionary ways, using platforms like Facebook to create and maintain a horizontal structure which spans across the country. In April of 2019, they held their second Assembly of Assemblies, with 300 delegations from across France, each delegation consisting of 2 chosen representatives and 2 observers. They discussed national and international coordination, the ongoing climate crisis, police violence against their movement, and the economic nature of their dissatisfaction. This assembly resulted in numerous coordinated statements, calling for the liberation of imprisoned comrades, a prohibition of some of the more dangerous police weapons used on protesters, boycotting the upcoming European elections, criticizing the role of capitalism in the ecological and economic struggles which spurred the movement, and for people to organize more citizens' assemblies to discuss and act on these things together. They've called for international cooperation and announced an international protest on Brussels on May 26th, the day of the European Union elections.
C'est en menant une lutte coordonnée contre nos exploiteurs communs que nous jetterons les bases d'une entente fraternelle entre les peuples d'Europe et d'ailleurs.